My name is Frank Congelos. I'm the managing partner here at C&A Financial Group. On behalf of all of us here at C&A Financial Group, we welcome you. It's great that you're spending time with us. We got a great subject for you this evening. We're going to be talking about Social Security, how to make wise decisions around it, how it works, some of the fundamentals, which are really critical to anyone approaching retiring, think about retiring, and it just stands for such an integral part of retirement income. It's important that we get this right. So we're very fortunate that our strategic partners over at Nationwide have partnered with us in making this presentation tonight. So our regional sponsor, which is Scott Weil, was nice enough to set everything up. So we thank you, Scott, for doing that. And we have a great speaker with us this evening. We've got Tim O'Mara. He is with the Retirement Institute at Nationwide, and Tim provides this presentation quite often, so he is really the expert when it comes to Social Security. What we'd like to do is allow Tim to present, and then if you have a question as he's going through the presentation, there is on your screen, you can raise your hand, but we will open up the mics at the end for any questions that you have, that we can have an open dialogue if there's something you'd like to know. So without further ado, again, welcome. So nice to be spending time with you this evening. And Tim, great to see you. And I'm going to hand it over to you at this point. So it's all yours.
Thanks, Frank. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the evening talk around Social Security. Excited to be here. What I kind of let everybody know up front is what the luxury that I have and what I do. A lot of the times, the topics that we talk on, I am not here for product. Okay. There is nothing really you can buy. I'm not here to sell you anything around Social Security. So I kind of just tell everybody that because there's going to be a lot of good information, not expecting you to be a Social Security expert at the end. But what we want you to know is that if you have those types of questions, you can come back to Frank and his team, and then they can come to us with those. We're just here to be a resource for everyone on the call around this, because as you can see, Social Security, it is the choice of a lifetime. And once you make that decision, it's with you for the rest of your life. So what I say, I don't want anybody to have buyer's remorse. I want everybody to go in confident. You may go through this presentation, and at the end of the presentation, you may be like, okay, that reinforces what I wanted to do or what I thought I was going to do. You may say, oh, I didn't know about that, or oh, maybe I don't want to do this. Maybe I should wait. All those different things and then may create other questions that hopefully we can answer at the end. So as we get started, the Nationwide Retirement Institute, everybody's familiar with Nationwide. You know our jingle. I have 3 kids, so I hear it incessantly, right? I'm good with the jingle. But what you probably aren't familiar with is the Nationwide Retirement Institute. And kind of as I alluded to, we are set up to give education and insights, and then interactive tools and consultative support. So of those 3, we're going to cover 2 of them tonight. I'm going to give you education insights around Social Security. And I'm going to introduce you to what is called our 360 Analyzer. Now, the reason we call it 360 Analyzer is because it's different than what you can go online and look at for a calculator for Social Security. We're going to look at a couple different things as far as different strategies, and it's all really based on time. So are you taking it early, a little later, maybe take it here? Is there a widow situation? Is there an ex-spouse situation? Is it a spousal situation or an individual? So all that, we're going to kind of look at everything that you have the opportunity to do and show you how to maximize Social Security. Because if you think about it, there's a big span between 62 and 70. So depending on when you're timing it or when you're going to take it, there could be up to an 80% difference in what your check would be. Now, granted, that the increases request or require that you wait a little bit longer. So are you comfortable with it? Do you not want to do it? By all means, we're just here to map out and to make sure that you make a very confident decision. We're going to talk about 3 things: Social Security, the choice of a lifetime, Social Security basics, and then guidance, again, where we go into the 360 Analyzer, where you can see that and have the ability to go ahead and run that analysis for you. So when we talk about the choice of a lifetime, what I want to do, and I'm not glitching here, but I'm going to put my video on pause so we can go through. Let me back up one. I want to talk about full retirement age, as far as kind of jargon or Social Security terminology. Full retirement age is important to understand. I'm not worried about how long you've worked at your current company, how long you've worked in an industry. If you have the ability to get a pension, if you're going to max out pension at a certain age, that's great. The only thing that Social Security looks at is the year that you were born. So on the chart from 43 to 54, full retirement age is 66. 55 to 59, that full retirement age is 66 in a few months. Anyone born 1960 or later, full retirement age is 67. Why I highlight that, kind of like old school cartoons, like an old Tom and Jerry cartoon. When you hear full retirement age, there should be a bubble that pops up above your head and say, oh, full retirement age means 100%. So we're not at 100% until we hit full retirement age. We'll be less than 100 at our ages 62, 3, 4, 5, and then for some of us, even under 100 at 66. But if we wait and go past it, we're going to be more than 100. So that's where we see this massive range, a lot of different numbers. What's right for me? The other thing that comes into play is there are restrictions, withholdings, and penalties that happen under full retirement age. I jokingly say full retirement age is like Disney's when all the magic happens. I can do this or I can do that. I have this luxury. I'm not going to get penalized here. I'm not going to get withheld here. So a lot of people say, well, people tell me I should take it at this age, or people say I should wait here, or people say I have to do this. You have to do what fits in your overall plan based on timing, what places in your overall plan for retirement and plan that you're working with your advisor. But to let you kind of see, well, like in mass, when are people actually taking the benefit? Well, as you can see here, we're going to look at those that are under full retirement age, so under 66. You have 25% taking it at 62, another 24% taking it at 63, 64, and 65. So almost half the folks are taking it prior to full retirement age, which is fine. But I have to kind of go back at this age 62 and tell you that that 25% number, it keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Here's why. If I went back to the mid 70s, early 80s, and I talked to people that were getting ready to retire, one of the major benefits back then that you used to have as a retiree was your employer would say, hey, appreciate your service. Thank you so much for working here X number of years. You can go ahead and stay in the healthcare program. Now, at 62, you can stay in it. Some said you can stay in it forever. Some said, well, you can stay in at 62 and then you can go over to Medicare at 65. Here's the problem. Only 6% of U.S. public employers, 6% of U.S. public employers allow a non-worker to stay in the healthcare plan once they stop working. So the reason I say that 62 is getting lower and lower and lower, people at this point now that are retiring don't have the luxury of an employer that says, yeah, you're 62, you can stay in our plan, which is cheaper than private insurance. And you can do that for the next 3 years and then jump over to Medicare at 65. I mean, back then it was easy. I'm going to go ahead and retire at 60. I'm going to go ahead and retire. I mean, I grew up outside of Pittsburgh. People retired out of the mill at 58 and they had a pension. They had health care covered. At 62, they turned on Social Security, and then half of them upped and moved to Florida, right? That was just kind of how it was back then. But now we don't have that luxury. I'm not trying to change your idea of retirement. We call it the healthcare hurdle. What are we going to do from 62 to 65 if 62 is when we're looking? Are you going to price private insurance? It's very expensive, right? So do we have the wherewithal to pay for that, for not just one, but for two? So I just want that. It's a struggle that a lot of people go through because they're like, well, I didn't know it was that expensive. So I'm going to have to maybe I'm going to go ahead and stay. Maybe you have a younger spouse. I have to get the younger spouse to 65. I may have to work past 65. All of these things we want to think about when we're talking about Social Security. Then at full retirement age of 66, we have 21%. So if you kind of look at it, that's a big number. Again, that's the big full retirement. Our baby boomers are aging through 66 at the clip of about 10,000 people a day are turning 66. Also remember, that's when you get 100%, the other penalties go away. Then we get more than 100% if we wait. A lot of people say, well, everybody's telling me I got to wait till 70. You can, by all means you can. Not saying you have to, and not saying everybody does it, because only about 8% wait till 70. There's a lot of decisions to be made between 62 and 70. So we want to go ahead and help you map that out. Now, another thing that happens, people say, well, Tim, you just told me I'm eligible at 62. Yes, you are 100%. But see, I'm in that healthcare dilemma. Myself and my spouse, we don't want to pay for private insurance. So I'm eligible at 62, but I want to continue to work for healthcare. And then at 65, we'll go ahead and stop working. Okay. But I want to take my Social Security check at 62. We got to pause. This is another hurdle or another situation where all of a sudden people don't really understand what is called the earnings test. So the earnings test under full retirement age, you can see in the blue bullet on the left. If you are under your full retirement age and you work and elect your benefit, on the bottom you see the number $21,240. Social Security says, okay, we're going to let you go ahead and take your check. We understand that you're working, but if you make more than $21,240, we're going to withhold $1 for every 2 that you go above. Now it's a withhold. They're not going to keep it. What do the math on this? Say someone that's 63 years old says, I'm going to take my benefit. They make $41,240. $21,240 is allowed. The other $20,000 is over the limit. They said, we're going to go withhold $1 for every 2. So I'm going to divide that $20,000 by 2, and they're going to withhold $10,000 of your Social Security income because you are under full retirement age. Here's another beautiful thing about full retirement age. Jump to the right-hand side under the light green. Now, when you hit full retirement age, they don't care how much you make. If you're 66 or 67 at full retirement age and you make $5,000, $50,000, $500,000, they don't care anymore. There's no withholdings. And what they tell you is, and what we'll do is we'll give you back the money that we've been withholding from you. Some people say, well, okay, I'll bite the bullet. They withhold something, I get it back. But now they have to explain how they give it back to you. So they have $10,000. Maybe they have $20,000 from a couple of years of withholdings. You get to full retirement age, you go running into Social Security. Hey, I'm here. You know that money you've been withholding? Can you write me a check for what you've been withholding? They kind of shake their head and say, no, that's not really how it works. We're going to give it back to you. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at this thing called a life expectancy table. You're currently 66. Life expectancy says you'll live to 84. So now what they do is they say, what we're going to do is we're going to add what we owe you on top of your check per month from 66 to 84. And you go, well, what if I don't live to 84? They shrug their shoulders and go, then you don't get all your money back. So we have to understand kind of where, how, and what their terminology of withholding to us seems like, oh, I get it back the day of or when I go back in. They actually pay it over that life expectancy table. So your checks will be incrementally dollars per paycheck or per check more, but you got to live all the way to 84 to get all your money back. Now let's understand, what do they look at that for earnings? This is not income. What goes towards that $21,240? And it's only 3 things. If you are a W-2 employee, so your W-2 wages, if you are a 1099 contract employee, so where you're responsible to pay into Social Security, or if you're a small business owner and you're paying FICA. That is it. They do not look at any pension checks. They don't look at any annuity payments. They don't look at money coming out of your IRA or your 401k. They don't look at money coming out of investments. They don't look at rental income, money you have at the bank, money you have in investments, money you have under the mattress, or money buried out in the backyard. None of that matters. That is income, yes, but that is not earnings. Think of it as I'm working, I'm taking a paycheck, I got to pay into Social Security. There's only 3, W-2, 1099, and small business. Okay? Remember, at full retirement age, though, if you turn 66 and you're still working, by all means, you can get 100% of your benefit if you want, no penalties whatsoever. Now, when we talk about kind of the calculation, this is a little bit of the science behind the math that they do. We're probably all familiar that it takes 40 quarters or 10 years. People think it's 10 years straight. Like, no, you can work a couple quarters, take a break, come back, work 5 years, take a break, come back, work 5 years. As long as you paid in 40 quarters, you've established what is called our primary insurance amount. Now, the key to understand about primary insurance amount is it is a calculation that is done for you based on one day in time. It is calculated on the day that you turn full retirement age. So when I turned 67 on August 27th of that year, that's what my PIA number is. Because we're going to use PIA as the basis for other payments, so we have to understand what PIA is. It takes 10 years or 40 quarters to qualify, but when they actually go to calculate it, a lot of people don't know this. They're going to take your highest 35 years of wages. They're going to look at every single year that you worked. They're going to go back 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, whatever it is, 35 years, and they're going to say, what would that be in today's dollars based on inflation? So it doesn't matter what year it happened. If you worked at a different industry, different company, you made more money, you had a business and you made more money, you sold it, you're doing something else. Whatever your highest year is, that's number one. Then they look, okay, what's Tim's second, then third? And they stack rank it 1 to 35. So let me give you my little insight on me. I'm 53 years old. I go back 35 years at 18 and I'm delivering pizzas and working at my dad's restaurant. That's a number that's in my highest 35. So I'm crossing my fingers at 53 and hope that I make this year more than I did driving and delivering pizzas and working for dad. So as I start throwing more years in, it will push the lower years down. Let's say I end up with 45 or 50 years of work. They drop the bottom and keep the best 35. Okay. That's the calculation that gives you your PIA amount. From there, they do the reduction if you're early, the increase if you're later. But they need 35 numbers. If someone has not worked 35, let's say they've worked 30, 28 years, they're going to put zeros in for those years that they don't have because they have to have 35 numbers. Now, is 5 zeros going to completely cut your check in half? Absolutely not. It's going to reduce it. It's not going to be the same as someone that has 35 numbers. So a lot of people who maybe went in and they were in an industry, I deal a lot with fire and police, public sector folks. They go in very early and they have the luxury of coming out after they maxed out their pension and everything else. They're like, there's no reason for me to stay. They're like, but I've been in for 30 years. Am I affecting my Social Security? I'm like, if you don't do anything else, it's going to be less than if you did something for the next 5 years to fill in as opposed to a zero. So primary insurance amount. And then understand, there is a max. The way Social Security works, every single year, there is a max tax for Social Security, meaning earnings up to a certain level are taxed. Earnings over that are not taxed. Every year, that number has moved up. Right now, that number is around $160,000. So if someone makes $160,000 and someone makes $1.6 million, the $1.6 million person is only taxed on Social Security $160,000. So think about this. Someone walks in the Social Security Administration, sits down. They go, wow, you made $160,000 for the last 35 years. Next person goes to the next desk inside the Social Security Administration, sits down, and they go, whoa, you made $1.6 million for the last 35 years. Guess what their checks are? They're the same. It doesn't matter that the person made 1.6. To Social Security, once you get to the peak number, again, this year is 160-ish. Last year was around 155. Before that, 152. So those numbers, as we go back in time, the numbers go down. Okay. So if you maxed out every year for 35 years, you can get a max check at full retirement age, or you can delay it. The biggest check possible for a 66-year-old person walking into Social Security Administration this year in 2023 is $3,625. That's it. There's not a $5,000 check that exists for someone who makes millions. There's not a $7,000, $10,000 check. It can go higher, but there's always a max number when people go in and determine what they can get for Social Security. So that's the calculation behind it. That's the science behind the calculation. Important to understand, if you have not over the last few years seen your Social Security statement, they revamped them in a better way. If anyone on the call, everyone that is working has an account. And if you have not activated it, then it's dormant at ssa.gov/myaccount. It's the email address that's on the bottom of the screen here. So ssa.gov/myaccount, go on, fill out your information, prove that it's you, set up your username or password. And this is what the new statements look like. I jokingly say we had something to do with it at Nationwide, but not really, because remember the old statements when they would calculate it. So if I can blow this up a little bit, when they would calculate your dollar amount or your check amount, they would give you age 62, your full retirement age, and then 70. So they skipped out all the other years, for they just thought it wasn't that important. Well, 65 is a big year for a lot of folks because I just mentioned I got to get to 65. I'm Medicare eligible. What they do now, as you can see here, they start at 62, running all the way out to 70. So now you can get an idea of how it increases every single year. And then I'm going to pause and go over here. This is what your earnings record looks like. It's not stacked best to worst. This is just chronological. So as you can see, this one goes from 2021, runs all the way back to 1970 through 1971 through 80. But look right above that where it says earnings record. It says review your earnings history below to ensure it is accurate. They didn't say we're going to call you if it's inaccurate. They didn't say, oh, we're going to double check and make sure it's right. They are telling us if we screw it up, you better tell us. We don't have no idea. The Social Security Administration as an agency is not proactive. If I looked on my chart right here and it said, I'm going to just kind of pick in 2013, if I made 49,000, in 2014 it said it was zero, and in 2015 I made 51.9, and I know I had the same job. They never pick up the phone. They never call you and say, Tim, you know you have a zero for a year, and they never do that. We have to make sure it's right. If there's any glitches in the reporting, they don't pick it up. They just take what's fed to them and they do the calculation. Now, oops, let me get rid of this. I think I'm frozen. Oh, I got to get through this real quick. Remember our little grid, 62 through 70, okay? What does that look like? Well, let's look at a 70-year-old. I'm a 67-year-old. If that 67 looks at their statement, the statement says at 67, you would get $1,000 and you want to go early, we get reduced. The biggest reduction is at 62, reduced 30%, so we get 70% of the check. If we don't ask for the benefit until 63, it's 75, then it goes 80, 86, 93. Then it moves to green because now we're at 100%. Now what they're going to do is say, we're going to give you 8% for the next 3 years. Take you all the way up to 124% or 1,240. Sounds good. Math works that way. 8% do it. So again, depending on your situation, where are you and kind of how do you want it to happen? One thing that people have to understand, once we turn 62, we are on a clock. And that clock says, okay, 62 eligible. 62 in 1 month, did they elect their benefit? No. 62 in 2 months? No. Every month that we do not turn on our benefit, we are rolling up and locking in a higher percentage. Example I use, if I blow this up and look at age 64 to 65. So at 64, I'm there and I'm like, no, I'm going to keep working. I'm good. Everything's great. Now, 64 in 6 months, something happens. Something with my health. I get a new manager. Company gets bought out. Something is that. And at 64 in 6 months, I go, I'm done. I'm out. Well, I've passed 80%. I haven't made it to 86. I am right in the middle, and I've locked in 83%. So a lot of people say, I need to wait, but am I missing out on money? I'm like, no, because every month your paycheck goes up. It goes up and up and up until we get to 70. Now, I will tell you, there is no reason that anyone over the age of 70 is not receiving their Social Security check, because there is no benefit. There is no more roll-up. There is no more delayed credits. So, and you like, well, who would do that? I've been doing this for 14 years, and probably at least one, I would say on average, I've averaged one person a year that's like, yeah, I've not turned on my Social Security check yet. Small business owner, still working, doing all this stuff. Didn't really think about it. Trust me, it happens. So that's full retirement age. Now what we want to do, now we're going to get into what I call the good stuff. This is probably where the questions are going to come up. For Social Security filing rules, there are over 2,700 plus filing rules. I don't even know them all. Each situation that we see here, surviving spouses, current spouses, divorce, dependent children, disabled individuals, and government employees. Each one of those bullets has its own set of filing rules. For our conversation tonight, I'm going to go over the top three. I'm going to go over surviving spouses, current spouses. So I'm going to use my parents and go over spousal rules and surviving spouse rules. And then for the divorced spouse rules, I love my in-laws to death, but they're divorced, and I throw them under the bus every presentation. But they know about it. So they're good with it, so it's okay. So let's talk about spouses. How are you eligible as a spouse to file, and what do you get? Well, you are eligible as long as you and your spouse are both 62 or older, must be married to that person for at least 1 year. And once your spouse files for their check or their benefit, that now allows you to use their work history as your own and file on that. Also includes same-sex couples. If there is a marriage certificate, then you are eligible. So what is the benefit? Understand how I'm about to say this. The benefit for a spouse is up to 50% of the spouse's PIA. I did not say that your spouse gets half your check because there's variables involved. They get up to 50% of the spouse's PIA. Let me give you an example. So go to my parents, Tim and Chris. Got married at a young age. Mom was 21, dad was a few years older. Now at 21, back in 1968-ish, and they got married in 69-ish, a little early. What back then is like, okay, let's get married, let's have kids, let's build a family, all that stuff. Mom and dad are like, okay, I'm in. Dad goes, I'll run the business, you run the household, tell me what you need. Now, my mom was 21 when they got married. So unless she started working at 11, she never had 10 years or 40 quarters. Nor did she have quarters while she was raising, I'm the oldest of three, the three of us. So my mom didn't have 40 quarters, got married, raised the three of us. My sister's 6 years younger. She goes off to college. My mom goes to my dad, I'm bored. What am I going to do now? He goes, I got an idea. Why don't you come down to the restaurant and you can work there and I'll pay you how? Under the table. Guess what that is? Big fat zeros for Social Security as well. So my mom's going through all this stuff and not accumulating 40 quarters, never had a PIA established. She had years recorded when she did work, but they're not calculating a PIA because she never clicked on and had 10 years or 40 quarters. But she's married to my dad. So I'm going to make mom and dad the same age, make them 66. Dad goes in, files, they say, Tim, based on your work history, you get $2,000. Okay. My mom goes, all right, so he's 66, check that box, married for way more than a year, check that box. He just filed, I'm now eligible. They say, yep, Chris, we're going to give you 50%. We're going to give you $1,000. He was getting paid $2,000. We're going to give you $1,000. Not reducing my dad to $1,000. My dad stays at $2,000. They cut a separate check to my mom for $1,000. Now they're getting $3,000. Okay. Same age, full retirement age, 66. Change the age. Mom's 62. Dad is 66. Dad runs in, files. He gets his check for $2,000. Mom goes, eligible at 62, check, married for more than a year, check. He just filed. They say, okay, Chris, you are eligible to get up to 50%. His benefit is $2,000. 50% of that is $1,000, but you're only 62. There are two things that will always reduce your check. Age itself, under full retirement age, and the earnings test that I showed you if you're under full retirement age. So my mom is eligible for $1,000, but based on age, she gets paid 75% of that. So she gets $750. Okay. Now let's go the other way. Go back to age 66. My mom can never file until my dad files. But my dad says, hey, I got a great idea. Here's what we're going to do. I can get a bigger check if I wait till 70 and you get 50% of my check. Did you hear what my dad just said? You get 50% of my check. Unfortunately, here's what happens. My dad goes, if I wait from 66 to 70, they're going to give me, my check's now going to grow to $2,640. And he tells my mom she gets half. We'll make them both the same age. So at 70, they're both 70. He runs in the Social Security Administration. He goes, I'm ready. They go, Tim, here's your check with the increases to $2,640. He looks at my mom and says, see, I told you. My mom goes, okay, I'm going to file now too. They go, Chris, here's your check for $1,000. Not half of 26. Remember how I said PIA is so important to understand. PIA is one point in time. So when this says your spouse gets up to 50% of the PIA, they go back 4 years, look at PIA, that number was $2,000, and they give her half of that. So for a current spousal benefit, there is a cap. The biggest possible check that a spouse can get while the other spouse is living is 50% of that PIA calculation at full retirement. Okay? Not 50% of the overall check. And again, under full retirement age would reduce you based on age. Now let's talk about surviving spouses. So I'm going to take my parents again. We'll go over the eligibility, different set of rules, married for at least 9 months. It's the only time I can tell you you can get a benefit as early as 60 as a survivor. As long as when you turn 60, you are still a widow. If we have a 52-year-old couple, husband passes away, spouse remarries at 58 or 59. At 60, they go to Social Security Administration and say, I would like to file off my first husband who passed away at 52. They're going to say, you can't, you're married. You're a spouse, you're not a widow. Same couple, 52 years old. Husband passes away at 60. She is not remarried, but now she is working. She needs income, healthcare, everything. She's not going to take a benefit. She gets married at 61. Even though she's married, it's after the age of 60. She's still eligible to file off the person that passed away at 52 based on the numbers, based on the math, if it works. Okay?
Hey, Tim.
Yes.
I just noticed there was a question in the box. It said, can Chris collect at 62 and Tim wait until 70?
No, because remember, let me back up. Great question. I'm going to back up. My mom could never file. She did not have her own record to file on. Okay. My mom could never file until my dad turns on his benefit. So if my dad waits, my mom's stuck in neutral.
Very good.
But great question. Great question. Here we go. So let's go back to Tim and Chris. At 66, same age together. Dad's getting 2,000, mom's getting 1,000. Fast forward to age 74. Now dad is getting 2,200 with cost of living increases. Mom's getting 1,100. Mom passes away. What happens? There is no scenario inside the Social Security Administration where one person can receive 2 benefit checks. They're always titled in a person's name and attached to someone's Social Security number. So if my mom passes away, that check disappears. My dad has his $2,200 check, and he gets cost of living going forward. Reverse it. What if my dad passes away? He's getting $2,200. My mom's only getting $1,100. Well, functionally, what happens? My dad's check is going to go away. My mom has to go in and file because now, as a survivor, she is eligible for 100% of the spouse's benefit if it is larger. You can't get 2 checks, but you can retain the higher of the 2 between a couple when one person passes away. Now, what happens? My dad's check goes away. Guess what Social Security Administration doesn't do? They don't send my mom a letter that says, hey, by the way, you want to come down here and get this $2,200 check. They're not proactive. You want to know the only proactive thing that they do? They're really good at it. They're really good at stopping our checks when we die. But they don't even notify their surviving spouse. As I told you, I've been doing this for about 14 years. More than 2 to 3 times a year, someone usually comes up. It's usually an adult child that comes up and says, wait a minute, my dad passed away like 3 years ago. I don't think my mom ever filed for his Social Security. I'm like, well, the good news is she can't. The bad news is they're never going to give her 3 years of retro payment. They'll give her maybe 6 months is the most I've seen, but they're going to say, that's your responsibility, not ours. Okay. Now, let's talk about kind of situations that we get into when we talk about surviving spouses. Okay. Again, this usually happens with female clients that we talk with, but that 52-year-old couple, husband passes away. Number 1, you lost a loved one. We understand that. Number 2, you lost income to the household, possibly. And then number three, you may have had lost health insurance. So that person has to transition. So the survivor says, I have to go get another job. I have to get a job that includes healthcare. I need healthcare, possibly, maybe still for a child, who knows? But they have to go change their path, and they have to go back into the workforce or get a better job and have healthcare. They get to 60 and they run into the Social Security Administration and says, look, I understand that I'm eligible. Can I please get that benefit for my husband? I'm still a widow. He passed away at 52. They go, sure. What we're first going to do is we are going to reduce it because you're only 60. So they're going to knock it down to about 65%. Then they go, are you working? And she goes, well, yeah, I have to work. They go, oh, okay, let's do the earnings test. Those two reductions take the benefit to zero. I had two ladies with the same situation in Biloxi, Mississippi. Both of them. One was 62, one was 63, because of where they're working, what they're making. And again, how much was the check really going to be worth? Do the reductions, it was zero. Not to say you never get the check, but based on the situation and the rules and the filing rules, the reductions take it to zero, or it takes it down to such a little amount. They're like, no, I'm not going to mess with it. Now, what happens when they get to 65? They stop working. Earnings test goes away. At 65, they're at a higher percentage of the benefit. Now, when we sit there and say, okay, do I go ahead and take the survivor benefit, or do I look at my own benefit, take my own benefit? Here's what's unique about a survivor. If you look over here where it says survivor benefits, the bottom bullet on the right, survivor benefits can be received independently of individual benefits. There used to be some strategy in play up until 2015. They changed the rules. The only strategy that I can show you is if you are a survivor and you have a survivor benefit and your own benefit. What I mean by that is, can you go and take the survivor benefit now? Okay. Let's say you're 63, you're not working, or you're 65 and you're on Medicare, not working. At 65, can I take the survivor benefit? And then based on the math and the roll-ups all the way till 70, will your own benefit at some point grow to be greater than the survivor benefit? And if it does, take the survivor benefit first, let your own benefit grow, and then move over to your new benefit that is now bigger because it's grown up until age 70. Okay. One more situation or kind of example with my mom and dad. Make them both 66. My dad says, I'm going to be crazy. I'm going to wait till I'm 70. Mom goes, you wait, I don't get a check. 66 to 7, 67 to 8. At 69 on my dad's birthday, he passes away. By the way, this is all hypothetical. Parents are alive. Dad's actually turning 80 this month. But at 69 on his birthday, he passes away. He's never taken a check. Mom's never taken a check. Mom's like, well, I'm supposed to get 50% of his check, or he's going to get this 2,600. She's like, I have no clue what I get. Here's what the rule says. You get whatever the client was receiving or would be set to receive upon the day of death. Now, based on my dad being a 66-year-old full retirement age, he goes 66 to 7, 67 to 8, 8 to 9. In that scenario, he hasn't even got to 70 yet, but he has 3 years of 8% because he's a year earlier at 66. So the day he passed away, his benefit sits at 124%. That's what my mom gets. They do benefit from delayed credits as a survivor, just not as a current spouse. Okay.
Tim, we have a couple questions.
Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Could his mom file at 62? Let me just look here. His mom filed 62. Did work, and she had 40 quarters, and the dad worked until 70.
I'm not understanding the question.
Yeah, I'm looking here. I'm reading here. Could his mom at 62? So I think what they're saying is if the
yeah, I mean, based
if
off
they
what they're
both
saying
had
right here,
40 quarters, could mom file at 62 and dad
yes.
wait till 70? And then when filing at 70, perhaps the question is, if half of his at 70 or his at 67, his normal retirement age is more than hers, when he finally retires, would her income go up?
It can. So if let's do it with my mom and dad. So if my mom had 40 quarters and let's say her check was $750. So she goes in, she sits down, the Social Security Administration says, okay, your statement says at 62, you can get $750. right? But you're married, but your husband hasn't filed. So when they look at what is she's eligible for, she's not eligible for a spousal benefit because my dad has not filed. So she takes her own check. She goes a couple years. Let's say my dad's older. Let's say he gets to 70 in 2 years, and now my mom can move up from, call it $800 to $1,000, which is half of that $2,000 number.
Yep.
That was not eligible. It's called deemed filing. That was not eligible for her at 62 because my dad didn't file. Now that he filed, it triggers her to be able to go and get a spousal benefit. So yes, she can raise up her check if the math works out.
So she can get the greater of her own benefit or the spousal benefit, even if she filed early. When he finally gets his,
Correct.
it's a different calculation, and she's not penalized for taking hers early.
Correct.
Very good. Thank you. I think that might have answered their question.
Okay. Any other?
Nope. All good in the question box. I see. Got it. Thank you from Bud.
Okay. So now let's switch gears and go over to my in-law. This is where I kind of jokingly say this is my Jerry Springer slide. Okay. It says divorce spouse benefits, but actually, if you look in some of the terminology, and I like this term better, it's actually called an ex-spousal benefit. Because if you were married for at least 10 years, definitive, currently unmarried, okay, you can still file as long as you are unmarried and you were married for 10 years. You can still file on your ex like you were still married to them. Same 50%, same 50% of PIA, doesn't reduce theirs. Okay. Now, with my in-laws, Tom and Carol, they were married for 16 years. They got divorced. Now, in my mother-in-law's eyes, she thought she was sticking it to him one more time by taking half his check. And I'm like, Grandma, no, it doesn't work that way. So she doesn't, it's just like a spouse. So if my father-in-law's getting $2,000 and she comes in and says, I'm an ex, here's the 10 years of marriage. We were married for 16. They go, okay, you get 50%, up to 50% of the PIA. You're 66, here's your $1,000. Everybody's happy, go away. Now remember, my mom, we said this a couple times, my mom can never file until my dad filed. Could you imagine if that was the rule for ex-spouses? And I'd have to go to my father-in-law and say, Tom, can you do me a favor? Can you go ahead and file for your Social Security benefit so your ex from 30 some years ago can now file and get eligibility on your check? He'd probably tell me to go somewhere not very nice. And then he'd pause for a moment and say, hold on, wait, what do you mean? You mean she can't file until I file? Huh, I'm going to wait till I'm 90 and file. I'm like, oh boy, that is not the rule. Third bullet in the left-hand column. Once the divorce is final, then we go on a clock for 2 years. After 2 years of the divorce being final, you can file on your ex at any time as long as you're both 62 and the person that is filing on the ex is unmarried. I've had people say, nope, you're wrong. They can't file on my Social Security. We put it in our divorce decree that you can't touch my Social Security. I'm like, you paid the wrong attorney. Them taking a check doesn't reduce yours. You can't stop them after 2 years of doing it anyway. So I'm not saying they're protecting. They're just saying we're not going to create any ill will between exes by you taking half their check or them stopping you from getting it. All right. Now, what I usually get when we were doing this live, and Frank and I were talking about how 100% live before COVID, we're kind of ramping back up to that. Usually what I would get is the question of, well, he was married for 16 years. What if he got divorced and was married to someone else for 11? And I go, here we go. Jerry Springer. So 16-year marriage, 11-year marriage. He has his own benefit. Okay. So if he needed to, based on the math, let's say he didn't make enough money, his numbers were lower. If he had to file on one of the two exes, which one is he allowed to, or does he file off of?
A higher one.
There you go. Just do the math and be like, I like you for one more day because you made more money, so I'll take 50% of yours. Doesn't reduce hers at all. He just gets a bigger check. But for this scenario, he goes in at 66. He gets his check for $2,000. He gets 100% of his benefit because his full retirement age is 66. My mother-in-law sitting there saying, okay, I'm 66. I'm good to go, married for 16 years. They go, okay, you get 50% because you're at full retirement age. X number two goes, hold on, wait a minute, me too. I'm in for 11 years. I'm 66. They go, yep, you too, you get 50%. So we're 100 to him, 50 and 50. Now,
how many marriages does this work up till, Tim? Just so in case somebody was wondering.
I'm saying if you can pack it 10-year marriages in there, you might be able to get 4, I think. And I think Johnny Carson was close to 4.
Oh boy, that can really, stick it to the government.
Right. So in my hypothetical, let's say my father-in-law he has a 65-year-old girlfriend and marries her. A year after them being married, she becomes the current spouse, not the ex, the current. And she's at full retirement age. She's like, I get 50% too. So 100 to him, 50 to her, 50 to X1, 50 to X2. That's 250%.
Wow.
Then my father-in-law dies. Now, as the current spouse, just went over it as I did with my mom and dad. If my father-in-law dies, the current spouse is at 50% and can step up to 100%. Now, remember what I told you in the beginning of this. It's actually stated or termed ex spousal benefit. So the two exes were getting 50. Their ex passes away. They now become an ex surviving spouse, and they both step up to 100%. We're paying 300% out to 3 people. It's crazy. No one's doing anything wrong. It's how the rules are, but that's the way it is. Now, again, that's a lot of different scenarios. If you have questions, please ask, throw them in the Q&A. I want to real quickly before, if we open up the mics, I just want to highlight what our tool looks like and what it does. So our 360 analyzer is going to basically ask a couple things. Number one, I'm going to ask everybody just so you can kind of understand what we're doing. The $1 million question when trying to figure out how to maximize Social Security is this question right here. Ready? What do you think your life expectancy is? Bam. Could be an age or two, an age range. That's fine. When we run it, we need an age just to give us one age. You can rerun it 1, 2, 3, 4 times. It doesn't matter. But give us an age. That way we can figure out, well, if we delay longer, what does it look like? If it's a husband and wife and he says he's going to live a long time and she's probably going to live longer. Hate to say it, guys. If he says, I haven't had a male in my family make it past 75, so I want to say 75. We don't know. It's variable and it's personal. This is all based on you. So tell us what your life expectancy is, because that's going to help us. Once we get life expectancy, what we do is we say, okay, here's what it looks like. In this, just where this graph is coming from, you have Jim and Linda. Jim is about 3 years older. He said he's going to live to 80. She said, I think I'll live to 85. So all we do based on the math. Now, remember, this is a Social Security 360 analyzer. We never ask you for your Social Security number, and we never or can we access your Social Security account. The homework part of doing this is PIA. I told you how important that number is. I need you to go to your statement and give us your PIA number and tell us what you think your life expectancy is. Okay. We're going to give you this. In this situation, we give 4 scenarios. Black line represents how do we get the most money back? What does that scenario entail? We say, Jim, wait till 70. You're going to get the biggest check. We're going to pay you for 10 years. Linda has her own. She's going to turn it on at full retirement age. She's going to get paid on her own up until you pass away at 80. And then for 5 more years, she's going to take the biggest check you possibly could get. Jim says, I get it. I'm just not comfortable waiting until 70. All right. Let's go back a little earlier. Jim, turn it on at full retirement age. That's in the orange. Let's go back and turn it on at full retirement age. Linda, you wait till you get to full retirement age. And Linda's like, well, wait a minute. If he's turning his on, why can't I turn mine on? I'm 3 years younger, so her check is going to be less. Why can't I turn mine on? Because they're going to be retired and doing everything. But okay, then we can roll it back down to the light blue. So as you can see, waiting till 70 in the black, taking a little bit earlier in orange, less lifetime income, taking earlier in the light blue, less lifetime income. And if they both took it as early as possible, so all the pundits out there saying, you better take Social Security as early as possible, it all depends on how long you plan on living. It's the $1 million question, right? We do a break even for you, kind of show you based on age, where would I break even? Where would I do it? And then we ask you one more question. And this is great. And I encourage you to take advantage of what Frank and the team are showing you tonight, because this can really, if you haven't kind of got the ball rolling about financial planning or look at doing a full-blown financial plan, I'm sure everyone on this call wants to know how much money they can get back from the Social Security Administration. Everyone does, right? Well, we say, okay, here's what the amount looks like. But let me ask you one little question. When you stop working, how much money do you need to operate your household and live the lifestyle that you need? In this hypothetical situation, they said, well, we both work now, we make X. But when we're retired, if we're not working, let's say we need $100,000. We say, okay, perfect. You need $100,000 today, $100,000 plus inflation next year, $100,000 plus 2 years of inflation, so on and so forth. So as you can see in orange, that's $100,000, and then swoop, it goes straight up because of inflation. Now, we get cost of living adjustments through Social Security, but they never are the same as inflation, right? They try to be, but they're not. But also, Social Security is never meant to be your only source of income in retirement. So what we have just created here is here's your $100,000 need. Here's your income that you get from Social Security. There is a gap. Now we can sit down and say, we have Social Security kind of understood and what that income is. We have assets here that we're working on to accumulate that then have to move to distribution. You're telling me you need X number of dollars. How are we positioned? Where are we creating? Is there any old 401ks, old IRAs, anyone even lucky enough to have a pension anymore? Are you going to downsize the house? Just have that conversation around this chart right here, and we can kind of start going down the path of doing a financial plan. This is our 360 analyzer. Just so everyone knows, we can only receive the questionnaire from Frank and his team. So all clients that were invited on this call, we are not asking you for any personal information. We need Frank and Frank's team information on here. So we'll have their firm, their email, their phone number, not yours. Your information comes here. If you're an individual, give us, if you're married, widowed, divorced, first name, last name, go tell us your PIA. When do you think? What do you think life expectancy is? And how much do you need to operate your household? I don't ask you for your home address, your email address, your cell phone, your telephone number, your Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, none of it. Everything flows back through Frank and the team. If you are married, then we fill it out again also for your spouse. And then we also have a box for widowed and a box for divorced. And that's our 360 analyzer.
So for all of our guests this evening, thank you so much for being with us. Tim, thank you for your sharing, for your partnership. Tell Scott we said thank you, and we appreciate you guys always sharing with us. And for everybody, have a great evening, and we look forward to catching up with you next month on another topic for our Wisdom Wednesday. Thank you, everybody, and good night. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.